There is a word in military theory, contested. It doesn't mean destroyed. It doesn't mean captured. It means we tried to prove something, and whether we succeeded depends entirely on who you ask. In 1944, German High Command announced that the Allied landings at Normandy had been repelled. Meanwhile, 100,000 Allied soldiers were consolidating positions on 5 beaches. Both things were communicated to the world as truth on the same morning. And historians have spent decades untangling which account was accurate and, more importantly, which account shaped the decisions that came next. Because here's the part that often gets lost in the noise of competing claims. In warfare, the narrative of what happened can matter as much as what actually happened. Sometimes more. I want to tell you tonight about a military base in the middle of the Negev desert in southern Israel. It's called Nevatim Air Base. And in the last several days, it has become the center of one of the most contested, there's that word again, one of the most bitterly contested factual disputes in the entire ongoing confrontation between Iran and Israel. What happened at Nevatim Air Base? Did Iranian missiles reach it? Were they intercepted? Was it a triumph for Iranian precision weapons or a demonstration that Israel's layered air defense architecture works exactly as designed? The answer, right now, is it depends on who you ask. And that in itself tells us something extraordinarily important about where this conflict stands tonight. Before I get to what happened next, if you're not subscribed yet, now would be a good time, because what comes next changes everything. So, Nevatim Air Base. Let's start there. It is not a random target. It is not a secondary facility somewhere on the outskirts of Israeli air power. Nevatim is, by almost any military analyst's assessment, one of the most strategically significant installations in the entire Israeli Air Force. It sits deep in the Negev, which means it's geographically positioned as far from Israel's northern and western borders as you can get while still being inside the country. It houses some of Israel's most advanced aircraft. It plays a central role in long-range operations, in intelligence coordination, in the kind of strategic planning that doesn't just happen during a crisis. It shapes what options exist when a crisis arrives. To put it plainly, if you wanted to send a message to Israel by hitting a target, and you wanted that target to carry maximum symbolic and operational weight, Nevatim would be near the top of the list. Iranian forces apparently understood this. According to Iranian state media, and this is where I want you to hold 2 things in your head at the same time, because this story requires that. According to Iranian officials, multiple long-range ballistic missiles were launched toward Nevatim. And according to those same Iranian officials, those missiles reached the base. They caused damage, serious damage in their telling, damage to critical infrastructure, damage to key sections of the facility. Iranian military spokesman described the operation as a precision strike, as a demonstration that Israel's most important military assets are no longer unreachable. The message, broadcast on Iranian state channels, was essentially, nowhere is safe. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Within hours, we're talking hours, Israeli officials were presenting a completely different version of events. According to Israeli authorities, the country's multi-layered missile defense network detected the incoming missiles early, well before they could reach their targets, and the interception systems were activated immediately. Interceptors were launched. The incoming missiles were engaged in the air. And according to Israeli sources, the core infrastructure of Nevatim Air Base, the runways, the hangars, the critical operational facilities, remained intact, undamaged, operational. U.S. defense officials, according to multiple media reports, echoed the Israeli account. The systems worked, they said. The base was protected. So you have on one side Iran saying, our missiles struck a critical Israeli target and we proved that Israel's defenses are not impenetrable. And on the other side, you have Israel and the United States saying, our defenses worked. The missiles were intercepted. The base is fine. And that is the part that nobody is talking about enough, because both of those narratives cannot be fully true at the same time. And yet both of them are already being used to make strategic decisions. Iranian commanders are citing this strike as evidence of capability. Israeli officials are citing the interceptions as evidence of defensive effectiveness. The political and military decisions being shaped right now in rooms that none of us will ever have access to are being shaped by one of those two stories. Maybe both. Here's the thing. Here's the thing about how modern conflicts actually unfold. The speed at which missile defense systems operate is genuinely almost incomprehensible from a human standpoint. Radar arrays detect a launch. Trajectory is calculated. Interception windows are computed in fractions of a second. A decision, what used to require a general and a telephone and several agonizing minutes, now happens algorithmically, almost instantly. When it works, an incoming ballistic missile is destroyed before most of the people on the ground even know it was coming. And when the interceptor misses, or when the incoming missile is sophisticated enough to defeat the intercept, the result is catastrophic. The alleged strike on Nevatim illustrates this technological contest with almost painful clarity. Iran has spent years developing long-range ballistic missile capabilities, specifically designed to reach targets deep inside Israeli territory. Israel has spent years and enormous amounts of money building and refining a multi-layered defense architecture specifically designed to stop exactly those missiles. What happened in the skies over the Negev desert in the past several days is, in some sense, the purest possible test of both programs. And the results of that test are, right now, genuinely disputed. Subscribe if you want to follow this as it develops. We're just getting started. Military analysts around the world are now doing what they do in situations like this. They are pulling satellite imagery. They are looking for damage. Runways that show blast patterns. Hangars that show structural compromise. Ground scarring that indicates an impact rather than an interception. This process takes time. High-resolution commercial satellite imagery has to be acquired, processed, analyzed, compared against baseline images taken before the incident. It is meticulous work, and it does not happen on the timeline of a news cycle. But it is the work that ultimately produces something closer to ground truth than either side's official statements. What we know with certainty, and I want to be precise here because precision matters. What we know is that missiles were launched. That is not in dispute. Iranian officials confirmed it. Israeli officials confirmed it. The launches happened. What remains contested is what happened next. Whether those missiles were intercepted before reaching the base, or whether some of them made it through. The physical evidence, when it is fully analyzed, will likely tell us more. But the narrative battle, that battle is already over. Both sides have claimed what they need to claim. And this matters beyond the immediate tactical question of whether a runway in the Negev desert has a crater in it. Because this incident is now embedded in the strategic calculus of the entire confrontation. Iran's leadership has signaled to its domestic audience and to the region that it has the capability and the willingness to strike Israel's most protected military infrastructure. Israel and the United States have signaled to their audiences that the defensive systems designed for exactly this scenario performed as intended. Each of those signals lands differently in Tehran, in Jerusalem, in Washington, in Riyadh. And the decisions that follow from those signals will shape whether this remains an isolated exchange or becomes something far more dangerous. History shows, and I keep coming back to Normandy because I think the parallel is more precise than it might seem at first. History shows that the story of what happened in a military confrontation can outlast the military confrontation itself. The narrative victory or the narrative defeat can drive escalation long after the physical events have been resolved. What Iran believes happened at Nevatim will influence what Iran does next. What Israel believes happened will influence its decisions about how and when to respond. The gap between those two beliefs, and it is a significant gap tonight, is not a communications problem. It is a strategic variable. Nevatim Air Base is still there. It is still operational, according to Israeli officials. The missiles that were aimed at it, whatever happened to them,